So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I am happy to see some familiar faces. What I'd like to ask you to do, please, is to keep your audio on mute for the moment and do not turn on your video so that the bandwidth is fully available. We have a lot of participants and that way things will go a little bit more smoothly. And if you're waiting while everyone joins, perhaps you can just introduce yourself by name and affiliation in the chat window. In looking at the participants list, I noticed for sure there's some familiar faces and you'll recognize probably some friends and colleagues as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy to host you today at our launch webinar of Hotel Resilient. I'll just flash the agenda here. We're going to take an hour to go and talk to you about Hotel Resilient, the COVID Ready tools, and we do like to serve some time at the very end for a question and answer session and recap things. I'd like to just show you the breadth of the participation today. This was just a few minutes ago. I think there was a lot of last minute registrations as well, so that number has probably gone up. But you know, we have around 350 participants who registered, currently 105 in the meeting, so we might get some more come in. But there was a lot of interest across various geographies. So within Europe, Greece, Italy, Germany, France, UK, England, and within Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific. And we even had some people register from South America, although I think the time is not really appropriate there. So we might have to think about doing something like this in the future for another time zone. So let me just start then by launching us into a poll. And it would be interesting to understand when you think hotels will be reopening in your area. And if you are not from a hotel, perhaps you will have an idea in your region when that might be. So I believe you'll see the poll now, and let's take a very quick vote, just a few seconds. And after we get enough votes, I think I can see how many percents are voting. So we're up to 25%. It'll be very interesting to see what the reopening time is across all these different regions that are with us today. Let me close that poll right now. We got up to 70 and share with you the results. So very interesting, very interesting. So 16% of hotels are actually open now, but we can see that the majority of hotels are planning to reopen August or later. And of course, there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties around it as well. That's reflected there. So let me, without further ado then, introduce our first speaker is Miss Jane McDougall. Now, Jane has been a champion of Hotel Resilient since 2015. Jane is one of the scientific experts that came in to help us develop the standards, and along with a few others that I see on the participant list here today. So she's been a strong supporter ever since. She's the Director of Risk Management at Le Méridien Phuket Beach Resort. She's also with the Phuket Hotels Association and the Phuket Disaster Resilience Foundation. So I'll hand it over to you now, Jane, and I'll move you over to the next slide.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's good afternoon or good evening to many of you, I think. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but from a global perspective, these are unprecedented times, and we have many countries and many communities that have been touched by COVID-19 with illness and death, restrictions in movement and travel, confusion, fear, isolation, loss of livelihood and a change in lifestyle. And we've also been bombarded on a daily basis with the media and a mixture of facts and a lot of misinformation as well. We saw just a moment ago from the from the questions that were asked, that some of our hotels are opening now. They're already open. Others are looking to open in the near future. They're feeling optimistic in most cases. And others, they're worried about which direction to take. So I'm here to say a few words about what hotels need to move forward as they reopen. Most of our hotels, if we're part of a large chain, we already have brand standard or brand guidelines if we're a chain hotel. As well as that, we're going to have guidelines already from our government. No matter which country you are from, there'll be government guidelines about how to prepare for COVID-19 and for the reopening process. Other kinds of information are also out there. We have guidelines from the World Health Organization, from the CDC, from tourist authorities, from health departments in different countries, from our own local governments, and also from tour operators. So there's a lot of information out there, and all in all, it's quite overwhelming what guidelines there are. Most of these guidelines have a lot of similar principles and themes. Hotels really at this point are looking for support. They're looking for guidelines that are going to help them prepare with regard to hygiene and optimising safety for all. So safety for all doesn't just mean our guests and our customers. Of course, that means our staff who have been in the front line, often dealing with guests, dealing with hardship, dealing with a world that's quite uncertain for them, not knowing whether they should be wearing gloves or what chemicals they should be using, and other things as well. So what we're looking for is we're looking for tools that are clear, that are simple, and that have the features that are indicated there on the screen. So those are, we want guidelines that are accessible. They need to be reliable, so they need to be based in science. They need to be credible, so they need to have come from recognised experts in the field. As well as that, we want to know how we can be prepared. First of all, we want to know how prepared are we right now before we do anything. Then once we have that baseline, where do we go from here? What are the things that we still need to do and still need to address to optimise safety and health and well-being for our staff and our customers? This also is going to give confidence to the local community who we all rely on. It's going to give confidence to the owners of hotels. It's going to give confidence to tour operators. So all of this is very important. And of course, for our guests, our local, our domestic guests, and our international guests, once flights and other things have opened up a bit. So that's the first thing, accessible. We need something that everyone can get to, a tool that everyone can get to that's not going to cost a lot of money. We need flexible guidelines. So, of course, the World Health Organization might encourage distancing, but you might have guidelines from your local health authority that says how much distancing is required, or what concentration of chemical is required, or different other aspects of preparation. So a tool needs to be flexible enough to incorporate the local guidelines and your brand standards as well. Also, a tool, if we're using it to prepare for COVID-19, it needs to be dynamic. The situation has been dynamic. It's rapidly changing, and a tool, any kind of tool we want to use to prepare, will need to be able to be versatile and be updated as there are changes. Changes in the science, changes in the progression of the disease, and changes in your local area. The other one I touched on before is affordable, because many hotels have been closed. Many staff have been without work, and the burden for that has often fallen onto the hotel owner or onto the local government. So we need tools that are affordable and not going to cost a lot of money for us to get expert involvement. So the tool that we're talking about today, I think, is very exciting because it ticks all the boxes that I've talked about already. This tool is going to not only give you the ability to do some assessment and preparation, it's also going to help you do some training, and training that focuses on what's important. I am a member of Phuket Hotels Association, and we have started a collaboration with Hotel Resilient so that all of our 75 member hotels can participate in using this tool, and later they can go on to certification. The reason we're doing this is we also believe very strongly that the destination can become more resilient if we do the same thing, if all of our member hotels do the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the guidelines and certify to international standard. We strongly believe that if we follow this path, it's going to give confidence to people who are using our hotels. It's going to give us support as we move forward. But most importantly, because hotels are natural leaders in recovery, hotels are perfectly placed to take this role. So I'm going to now, I've given you a little bit of an introduction, but I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Bijan Kazai, who will tell you more about Hotel Resilient and also about the COVID Ready tool, which is very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane, for that wonderful introduction. I do notice there's a raised hand, and I ask you to keep your questions. Think about what questions you might want to ask us to the question and answer session. We have a full program, so we can get through that. So yeah, I'd like to just start us off. My colleagues will be taking us through the various COVID-ready components, but I'd like to maybe ground us back into what Hotel Resilient is in supporting resilience in hotels and resorts. And hopefully try to convey that these 5 criteria that Jane has outlined isn't just something that we have now trying to adapt to or cater to in this crisis, but that is in fact the whole philosophy behind Hotel Resilient. So Hotel Resilient is a response to a need in the industry. In 2013, the Global Assessment Report came out with a finding that there are no global standards on climate and multi-hazard disaster risk management for hotels and resorts, and there are many standards in the industry. And there are some crisis management standards, but having a risk-driven approach based on scientific research and based on modeled output, we know a lot about catastrophe risk, is really what we wanted to put out there. So a big part of Hotel Resilient journey has been the development of the standards with industry experts. The other part is to make the tool useful to the hotels. At the end of the day, no one wants to have a book of standards. What we try to do is make user-friendly software to be able to implement those standards, on-site training, as well as e-learning to understand the content, both for hotel managers and staff with various types of responsibilities. So the standards cover 3 modules, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the very end. So those are site, systems, and management. 3 components, 9 modules. There's 250 elements in the Hotel Resilience Standard. It is the only global standard on multi-hazard disaster risk management, climate change adaptation, and our tools and our handbook break down these standards into simple to understand guidelines and tools. There's a complementary 30-hour e-learning content that goes along with each of the 9 modules, covering each of those in quite some detail with interactive content and videos and knowledge tests. But we've also had a 2-day training program that we actually piloted in Bohol in the Visayas in the Philippines. I'm very happy to see some participants coming from the Visayas today. And we are now collaborating with the German Development Cooperation, GIZ, to do those types of trainings in the Maldives and Indonesia. Of course, with the COVID-19 crisis now, travel to these locations is limited. So we're looking at other ways of content delivery. What's part and parcel of Hotel Resilient, as I mentioned, is user friendliness. So what we have is a software, and the software is really, you can think of it in two parts. There's analytics, web application, which caters and brings in a lot of information that you don't really see, but we try to make it invisible to you. What happens is there's hazard models across all kinds of hazards. They get combined with detailed characterization of your buildings and site. And what you're able then to see is, James will talk about this in much more detail. So we have disease outbreak or pandemics as one of our hazards, but you can see we go beyond just pandemics. All kinds of natural hazards, technological hazards, and the impacts of climate change are covered. And this is available for some hazards globally. In some regions, much more detailed analysis is done at the country level. And we work, for example, in the Philippines. PHIVOLCS, of course, is one of the, or is the authority when it comes to natural hazard modeling. And we work together with partners to deliver to you the best models that are available within a region. What you might imagine as the output is at the very end of the audit. Once you go through the Hotel Resilient audit, you are able to obtain a resilience score. You can see what your score is, what you can improve onto, what are you in terms of preparedness, response, and recovery. But you can also get a very detailed footprint in terms of your risk from these different hazards at your site, if you have them. And we've tried to make the audit tool friendly, that you can improve tasks, manage tasks, assign them to your staff. Andreas will be taking you through the software on COVID, which is the same frame that we're using in COVID now as the Hotel Resilient Framework. So all of those features are available for free to all of our users. So with that, I'm just going to end on this. We have these three main components. We look at the site and we can look at things at the building level. So when you do the tool, Andreas will show you, enter information about your individual buildings. We bring in the hazards from the site and we ask you some questions about site conditions. Then we move you through various prevention systems, be it infrastructure, evacuation, warning systems. And then very importantly, we look at your protocols and processes, your roles and responsibilities in terms of crisis communication, business continuity, preparedness and management. So you can see it goes beyond just looking at single dimensional components. And when I hand it over to Trevor just now, I'd like you to see how the COVID-ready standards that we've developed are reflected and fully aligned with the Hotel Resilient systems. So with that, I'm just going to move over this way and let Trevor come and take over.
Thank you, Bijan, and hello everyone. My name is Trevor Gerard, Director of Standards and Accreditation at Hotel Resilient. So as Bijan discussed the wide range of hazards that we look at, I'm now just focusing in on pandemics and specifically, and the reason for, I'm sure everyone joining us today, on COVID-19 and our COVID-ready standards. So on the bottom of the screen here, you see a number of icons, and these really represent the major concerns for hoteliers as they think about when and how to reopen to the public. And as we heard earlier, back from people in the poll, that a number of people in hotels would not be or planning to reopen until August, and some earlier. And so some of the concerns that I'm sure are on their minds are depicted here, things like changes to their policy to cover COVID-19 issues, personal protective equipment, regulations from national, regional authorities, quarantining of guests or staff, cleaning procedures, hygiene procedures, new ways of working, new ways of doing check-in and check-out, and restaurant and buffet services, a wide range of issues. And so we've looked at all of these different issues for hotels. We've looked to international guidelines, best practices, scientific evidence, and all of this is, some existed already in pandemics, and much of it though is just being developed as this pandemic has been developed, has been advancing. So this is what the COVID-ready standards look like. As you can see, they match the main hotel resilience standards, and that we are always looking at the hotel's site conditions, which is associated with risk and exposure of the hotel. We're looking at the systems, which focus on prevention, and the management, which looks at the plans, the procedures, and the capacity. So narrowing in a bit more, looking at site for exposure for COVID-19, we're looking at the infection rates nationally and regionally, and infections in the area around the hotel. Risk controls, so these are the national regional regulations to prevent transmission, such as business closures, public space restrictions, maybe the wearing of masks in public. And really, the more strict of these policies, then the less likelihood that transmission will occur, and the lower the risk for hotels. And vulnerabilities, so things like hospital capacity in the area, density of the area, things that will make the hotel even more vulnerable. And next to systems, we look at enhanced cleaning. So cleaning of all objects, surfaces, fixtures. We look at ventilation. So it's all those actions that will help remove the virus from the hotel. And next is safe hygiene. And this is really at the individual personal level. So preventing an individual who is infected from spreading the virus, and ensuring that those who are healthy do not become infected. And then social distancing, or what we're calling physical distancing, separating where possible and within limitations, guests from staff and vice versa, to really lower the risk of person-to-person transmission. And under management, the protocols are the documented guidelines, plans, and procedures for how a hotel is going to be acting during this pandemic threat. And the response, this is really a response to an actual infected case within the hotel, so be it a guest or a staff member. And last, staff capacity, so the training, skills development, ensuring that there's really certain roles and responsibilities that are being fulfilled. So as you can see, these make for a comprehensive set of COVID-ready standards. They really go beyond cleaning and hygiene to cover all areas where hotels will need to plan and act. And we have this same approach for any hazard, whether it's a pandemic in this case, or a flood or earthquake. Really all of the areas that hotels need to look at when they are planning on preventing and responding to any hazard. And so to make this even easier and more accessible to staff at hotels, for them to learn about the standards and what's behind them, we developed the e-learning courses. So these cover all 9 components of the standards in the 7 lessons. Staff learn about prevention and response to COVID-19, and it's really in a hotel setting. The courses are self-paced, they're remote, so staff can do this from the comfort of their own homes if they're still working from home, if possible, if they are intending to practice physical distancing where possible. The courses are really interactive and engaging, and there's links to further information, things like posters, signage, checklists. And finally, the content is continuously being updated based on latest data and guidelines on COVID-19. And so now I'm just going to take you to the e-learning itself, just so you get a feel for what it looks like. And so I'll select one of these modules, the second one here, prevention systems. So for each of these modules, there's 2 to 3 lessons within them. And as you can see, it's really filled with a lot of images, a lot of useful information. It really takes you through each of the elements in the standards, and where applicable, it'll take a single element and talk about how that applies to the various amenities and services that a hotel offers, as well as the various functions of the different staff. And there's a lot of resources as well, tips for different staff. As well as reminders for what they should be doing as they are implementing their actions to keep them safe. Explainer videos showing them how to, things like putting on gloves, wearing masks. And a lot of this material obviously is not like these videos are not produced by us, but we've compiled these publicly available material for hotels. And so really just a lot of additional resources for hotels we've added to here. And so on that note of additional resources, one key resource that we have at Hotel Resilient is that we are linked to data analytics for hotels. And to talk to you more about that is James Danielle. I will just pass this over to James. So it's all yours, James.
Okay, so good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. My name's James Daniel. I'm CEO of Analytics at RiskLayer. And how do we fit into the picture? Well, we provide the analytics for Hotel Resilient. So what do we do at RiskLayer? Well, we explore disasters, we model disasters, we collect data, and we really provide dedicated risk metrics for Hotel Resilience. And we combine this all together. So next slide, please, Trevor. So we analyze all different types of disasters around the world. And when I mean all disasters, I mean all disasters. So we look at immediate disasters, say like an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. Short onset disasters, like a typhoon, where there's a bit of time for evacuation, these types of things. And the long-term types of disasters, such as climate change. We model the hazard, we model the exposure to that hazard, the vulnerability of structures, of the systems, of people, as well as then deliver risk metrics. And we've built many models that are used in the insurance industry globally, governments, aid organizations, and other companies. And what's sort of unique about it is that we do it in two ways. We do it, one, pre-disaster, where we look at, what are the losses or what are the impacts going to be in advance of a disaster, and also post-disaster. So we're very well known around the world for doing post-disaster analytics. And we trust local. So we don't always do our own modeling. Where we see a better model being built from local partners, such as FIVOLX in the Philippines, we will use and we will integrate in with the systems that are already there. We don't want to just model on top of where there's already a very good model. Next slide, please. So we really want to get at, where do these types of hazards occur? How often do they occur? How big are those events going to be? And what is the impact going to be on your hotel? And it's not just your hotel, it's also the tourism destination around the hotel, as well as the tourists coming to your hotel. It's not just the sort of the building itself. It's obviously a disaster can happen somewhere else in the world and it can affect your business. And so we really try to get into the analytics of this and to provide risk metrics associated with this. Next slide, please. So we model specifically to hotels. And two different hotels will have very, very different impacts. And we have, say, a hotel on the Mediterranean Sea in Greece and one down in Egypt. One is a resort, one is up on a hill. However, from a tsunami, they may both have impacts. One may have a direct impact for the buildings, and other ones may have an impact based on the system. In terms of the tourism destination itself, we also have issues associated with the analytics associated with this as well. So we also need to not only look at that tourism destination and that hotel specifically, we also need to look at the systems. In terms of stress testing, we do scenarios. So for a particular earthquake, for a particular tsunami, we ensure that the hotel is ready for these different hazards. But we also understand that it's dynamic. So a hotel has different occupancies at different times. It has changing assets. And therefore, we try to take into account all of these systems. Okay, so all around the world over the last 15 years, we've collected huge amounts of data. Subnational data, arrivals, spending, these types of things. And this provides quick insights along with other data. So we add into the mix Google mobility data, government data, political decision data to get at risk metrics. Now here we just see on the bottom, we see the number of overnight travelers per province, say in the Philippines. Here we see system dynamics of hotels around the world. And just as a quick example, what we can get at, Jamaica. So Jamaica has 20% of their tourism coming from, or their tourist expenditure coming from two locations in the US, New York and Florida. Now for COVID, that's extremely important. Some of these resorts even have up to 30% from just these two states. And these are two of the states which are most affected by COVID. Next slide, please. So we don't just model on the national level. We model subnational level, sub-subnational level, going down to local data, because that's the most important for individual hotels or groups of hotels. We understand that across a country, there's extremely different rates of infection, say from COVID. And depending on where your visitors are coming from, this will have a very, very different impact as to your transmission rates. Now, the data that we've collected is used by the world. So Johns Hopkins uses our data in their platform, Wikipedia, lots of news networks all around the world. And we've been doing this since the start of COVID. Why? Because we noticed very early on that it's extremely important for the tourism industry. It's one of the most affected industries from COVID. And so we really wanted to to collect this data at a very high resolution. At a particular destination, say for example, the Philippines, we have from the Department of Health, of course, you have good municipality level data on cases. We also have the collection of data on a barangay level from a lot of different locations. So by going into the data, by collecting transmission data, hazard data, the rate of infection in the last 7 days, and these types of metrics, we are able to look at the potential impact of COVID. We realize that it's a dynamic situation. So since the start, you see the graph in the middle here, this is saying the impact on population mobility across a country. So we see that obviously we got down in certain places to an 80% reduction in retail and recreation in terms of the number of people visiting these locations. This is slowly starting to build back, and it differs depending on where you are all around the Philippines. And it's just these types of metrics. This is just one very, very small example, but there's a lot more metrics that we provide as part of the hotel resilience sphere, as part of this COVID system. And some of them go into the software. So now I'll hand across to Andreas Schaefer, who's going to explain the software side of things. Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Andreas Schaefer. I'm basically the developer of the web integration of Hotel Resilient. And I give you a quick walkthrough how the software looks like and what you will experience in a few weeks in terms of interaction with our standards online. So you will log into our system. You will have to create your own account for yourself as a manager and to sign up as a hotel. And right after registration, your first task is to provide some details about your hotel, where it is located, what kind of hotel it is. So you can utilize your hotel information to start your audit. For some of the future components, like the hotel resilient audit Bijan mentioned in the beginning, with our more than 250 items on it, you will also need to give building details so that we can access the vulnerability of your structures. But that's at the moment not part of our COVID ready. So after you added your hotel information, you can select the audit of your what you need. That would be at the moment our COVID ready audit, and yeah, many more audits coming in the future. These audits are basically a set of questions built from our standards and supported by the analytics of a risk layer, for in this case, of course, all over global corona and COVID details. After you answered all the questions for the first time, you are at the point of revision where you can take action and enhance your current resilience with a lot of tasks. So we have integrated task management to guide you through enhancing your current resilience. And after reaching a certain threshold of minimum credentials and resolving a few mandatory standards, a few mandatory questions, you are eligible to go for certification and also receive expert review. And that's highly linked to our different subscription plans we are going to show you. So when you're in the software, you have several areas to interact with. We have analytics, which provide you detailed risk and event information depending on the current situation. You have the audit section where you can access the variety of resilience audits we are providing. At the moment, that's of most interest, of course, our COVID ready audit. Then the task management to guide you through to become resilient. Then the membership section where you can manage your current membership, your plans, and of course your certificates you have earned. Then online access to our hotel resilience standards and a direct link to the e-learning component Trevor introduced before. And all of this is currently on an early access phase. So we are going to go live on June 5th with the software, and the software will be extended and with new features during the upcoming month. So we will build the software together with you as a community. And so you have opportunities to give feedback, what we can also do better to give you a better experience in becoming more resilient. And with these closing slides, I give you a quick introduction into the software, at least a little glimpse of what you will experience in a few weeks. So you are here in the audit section of our software. And you can select our COVID ready audit. You get some descriptions all around it, and there will be other audits added to in the future. And we already have, of course, our big hotel resilient audit also available for our members. So when you start the COVID ready audit, you are guided through the different components from exposure over cleaning components to the response plan. And you can go through one component after another. So you have the question lined out, you have different answering options based on the standards, and you can provide your answers as they fit to your situation at the moment. You can flag questions for later, to remember them for later, or you can already create a task all around this individual questions to answer. So I don't want to go through the whole audit with you at the moment. I already prepared an earlier one where only a few questions are missing. So we answered most of the questions. And now at the very end, I'm just clicking through a few of the answers. So you have basically different answering options, and they depend on the criteria in detail on each of the questions. So at the very end, you can save your answers, and you can compute your resilience score. And in this example case, I received a score of 65%, which is not enough in that case for going for certification, but I already received a lot of details on how I perform on the different components. We have graphics provided for you. And in the next step, you can take action to enhance your resilience. And on the take action, you get back to all of the questions to assess them in detail. For example, mandatory questions marked with an exclamation mark, which you have to fulfill. You can get the information around it, even more information in this case, tasks to guide you again in resolving the open issues in here. So when you create a task, you can set a due date wherever you want it. For example, June 2nd, you create a task, you can close it. It is marked here, so the striped area always indicates that there is some task going on in the background. And this way you can go over all these questions, of course not the green ones, because there you already did a good job with the tasks created, and you can complete them here and your answers will change. And we are, of course, extending the functionality all around it. And in case you have done well enough in the end, so I also prepared an audit with already a score of 91%. You can apply for certification. You are on an exceptional rating in this case. And yeah, that will be the point where we are in personal contact again to get to you and to your Hotel Resilient COVID Ready certification. And these are my closing words, and I give back to Bijan Kasai.
Wonderful. Yeah, I before we launch into our question and answer session, maybe you prepare some questions. You should raise your hands, not your carbon hands, but your virtual hands on the screen. There is a little icon at the bottom of your chat window, which allows you to raise a hand. But as you think about your questions, let me just tell you about the COVID Ready certifications that we have and our membership plan, because I'm sure that's also of interest. So what we have is a COVID Ready and a COVID Ready Gold certification. The reason we distinguish between these two levels is that the COVID Ready certification, they both require an 80% pass rate. So you have to get 80% in terms of the questions, and all the mandatory requirements, in fact, that are in the audit and the standards have to be complied with in order to be certified. The COVID Ready certification is based on a limited review of some documents that we will be doing. You submit those to us electronically, we review them. There might be some iteration, we will ask for more information, but that's based on a limited review. Then we also have a comprehensive review that includes much more documentation. It also has an optional on-site certification in destinations where that option is available, where we're working with accredited assessors. We'll be able to offer an on-site accreditation as well. With the gold certification, we're also able then to rate your performance in your certificate diploma, and according to your score, we have devised a star rating system, so 3, 4 to 5 stars, to really distinguish those that go above and beyond. This certification is going to be available, as well as the use of the software, on June 5. So we are, in fact, launching this, informing people about it, but the rollout of the software and the certification is available on June 5. Our membership plan looks like this. We understand currently with the situation that is happening that we need to keep, and we commit to keep the prices affordable. So we have reduced our membership rates by over 60%. What I say before the membership is that we have a basic or free plan. You become a member and you can use all the COVID Ready tools. So the standards, you'll be able to view the audit tool that Andreas was showing you, as well as all the functionality to improve tasks. That's available for free, as well as webinars that we will be putting out. So you can come into the system and use it and see the standards for yourself. Go through the audit, see how you do, see if the tool is useful to you. If you're convinced of its use, we offer a membership plan. With the membership, you get the COVID Ready certification. If you're an associate member, it comes with the membership. So that's $299 a year. As I said, that's a over 60% reduction of what our usual membership rate would be, as well as the analytics that James was showing, and that will be coming in phases. So we won't bring in all the analytics at the moment. We'll be bringing them bit by bit. We're making the tool accessible because the crisis demands it right now. Our actual launch date wasn't till August. So there is some features that will be actively coming in. But as I said, you'll be available, the certification will be available at the associate level. And then if you want to move to the leader membership, that allows you to get the COVID Gold certification. Of course, then we also will be doing a more comprehensive review of the documents that you supply to us. So this is kind of our last slide before we go into our Q&A. Again, I just wanted to flash the website. There's an email for more information that you'd like to have. You can just contact us. If you have questions for Jane, please contact the info@hotelresilient.org. I'll forward your queries to her directly. COVID Ready certification, again, available June 5, and the Hotel Resilience certification and all the tools and some of the analytics that James was showing will be coming in August, but there will be continual feature development. On our website, there is a development plan and a release schedule where we'll be including more details and update you as we have that. So with that, I bring back here our panelists, and I do ask you to please raise your virtual hand if you find that in the bottom corner of your screen. And if there are some questions to any one of us at this point, would be good to take those. And we'll take the questions in order of the hands raised. So please don't all unmute your mics at the same time. There are a couple questions that came up in the chat. So I will have Trevor read it because his handwriting is very special. And then and whoever needs to answer it, then can answer it, including Andreas, James, or you, Jane.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So first question is if it's possible to exchange lessons learned with all members who use the software. I can also start tackling this one. Yeah, so one of the key intents of this is to really share experiences between hotels. So the idea is that as we're doing this, of course, we wouldn't be sharing any information that hotels would not want to share. So if anything was shared, it would be in agreement with the hotel in question. But the hope is that hotels would be implementing these practices, would be providing us feedback as well as how they went, how practical they were, how they got around maybe some of the barriers that pop up. And we really think that these types of issues and these individual hotels, their way of solving them will be quite useful for other hotels in other areas about to implement either the same procedures or have already maybe been trying to and are facing similar challenges. So exactly how we will be sharing this, as we said, there will be still new feature development, but we will have sort of lessons learned, and we'll have feedback from the hotels themselves. And this, did you want? I'll let Bijan also add to that.
Yeah, as Trevor was talking, I did think of something to share here on that. Of course, we would like to work with some destinations directly, as Jane mentioned to you, the Phuket Hotel Association and Hotel Resilient are collaborating together. And when you have then a destination with hotels already talking to each other, the lesson sharing is already in place. That network is in place. And so we can tap into that and distribute more effectively. Yet we would like to share across regions lessons that are imparted to us. So I think two avenues for that would be a newsletter that we plan on releasing. So through our newsletter updates and on our website, you'll be able to keep track of the latest information, both coming from the hotels and our members, as we hope to collect them, as well as the latest sort of scientific information that's relevant to the hospitality sector. So that's one of the contributions Hotel Resilient Institute sees itself in doing. And then, of course, it's through collaborations that are intense with certain hotel associations or destinations where we can engage, and then we would establish a memorandum of agreement together and take those steps accordingly. I don't see any raised hands, so we'll take the second question here. Is this in coordination with local authorities? That's an excellent question. We are looking at international guidelines. So we want to make sure that what we include in here is sort of the global consensus, what the international authorities are saying on the standard. Yet, as Jane said, in your locality, that might deviate, or as the situation changes, even regions might regionalize the measures that they take. So our audit tool has to be able to respond to that. So we're looking at this global framework in alignment with Hotel Resilience standards, but when we talk to the Phuket Hotel Association, for example, we'll be able to develop content that's targeted to their area. That requires collaboration, that requires that kind of exchange. In any case, our standards always in the mandatory requirements refer to local and regional guidelines. So that's, you have to meet that, and we hope what we're showing goes even beyond that or above that. So in that sense, we don't want to have the two talk against each other. We want to be in alignment with local and regional guidelines, and our tool has the flexibility to address that. So the question is, are you working with DOT in the Philippines? Well, I can answer that. We have been working very closely with the DOT since the beginnings of Hotel Resilient. The Philippines is indeed the country where it all started. In fact, it started in the Visayas, in Bohol, in Cebu, and Bantayan as well. And then in Metro Manila, we've been talking and working with hotels. So the first contact point, of course, was with the DOT, and we are in the process of developing a memorandum of agreement together, but we're in the process still, and I don't want to say much about that until it's finalized, but yes, we are looking to work with the DOT, and we would like to make sure our solutions are relevant and catered to the context of the Philippines. I think that's why James also was showing the analytics to you, really focusing on some of the Philippines data that we have. Okay, I see now a couple raised hands. Romel, who I know very well, and Rashmin as well. So can I start with Romel? Romel, if you unmute yourself, you can then put your question.
Yeah. Hi,
Hi.
good afternoon here, Bijan. No?
Hi,
Nice to see
Romel.
you again.
Great
Anyway,
to see you.
yeah.
Romel is one of our champions. He, in fact, he made his whole resort, the Bellevue Resort in Bohol, available to us for the training that we did. So he's been behind for many years.
Anyway, for the start, I'm no longer with Bellevue, but I'll be on board another property by June. Okay, my question is, I'm thinking of, you know, the association, the Bohol Hotels, Resorts, and Restaurant Association to be part of this, you know, certification process. In a way, can you extend a much lower rate to an organization spearheading this kind of collaboration?
Romel, that's an excellent question. We have indeed we're working with the Phuket Hotel Associations on these types of arrangements where we believe what we offer is of value. What the Hotel Association itself offers is also very valuable to us. So we're looking for in-kind contributions to be able to carry the resources. The 299 fee for membership that we're asking essentially just covers the resources we need to review the certifications. We could be just, you know, having people do the audits and then issue certificates, but then they wouldn't be worth much. So the idea was to make sure there is quality behind it, we, take the time to review it, even if it's limited content that we're reviewing. We're going to be reviewing those documents, which are critical pieces of information, very carefully. And then, of course, the comprehensive review has a lot more effort in it. So we've reduced our rates greatly in order to accommodate the situation, but we're at the same time still looking for these types of collaborations.
Yeah, thank you, Vidyan. And also, I was the one who asked the question with this DOT collaboration, because at this point in time, it should be perfect that, this certification should be course to DOT that should be mandated to all the tourist accommodation, in the hospitality business in the Philippines for us to be more effective.
Absolutely. And that's where the DOT has its health and safety guidelines, and we're quite aware of that. And the process of working with the DOT has to be in alignment with the guidelines that they come up with. And then to the extent that we can be of value in offering a vehicle for delivering those guidelines and a certification that perhaps goes into some directions above it, that's what we see our role.
Okay, thank you, Vidyan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronel, and good to see you. So, yeah, maybe Rashmin, can I hand it over to you for a question if you unmute yourself?
Hi, Bijan. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you virtually. First of all, many congratulations to all of you. So it's a great presentation. I really liked how the impact it actually is going to have. I think it's going to be truly revolutionary. So from the World Bank, I think there will be a lot of interest in this, particularly given the current COVID-19 impacts that we see, specifically in the region that I'm actually working on, which is the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So in the Caribbean region, there are two key parts. One is the existing risk, for example, with sargassum. So it'll be good to know whether you're actually looking at kind of those level of issues, which is kind of endemic in some of the Caribbean islands as well. So that's part one. And then are you then linking up with say the local disaster risk management agencies? So the resilience could be then translated into action, not only from the hotel, but also from the other stakeholders as well. But also I was thinking the hotels themselves in partnership could take action with the wider agencies. For example, as part of the resilience metric, if they can have a metric of the initiatives the hotels are taking, either through cleanup or other mitigation options. So for example, creating soap out of sargassum. So this kind of leads into the third part. It'll be good to see what kind of recommendations are provided from the hotel resilience audit. So for me, that would be a key part, and how that kind of influence of the stakeholder map could actually change. So those were some of the key observations, but I really see a lot of value, perhaps much more beyond just the hotels themselves, but to the wider industry, but also a connection to more the national strategies that countries are actually working on, especially in the Caribbean. Because again, perhaps this is a bit more of an emotive topic for me, because I work a lot very closely with the Caribbean ministries of finance, as well as with the industries, and they are suffering. The key industry in the Caribbean is the tourism sector, right? And what they want is to build trust that it is safe to come back, and a potential solution could be hotel resilient. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those very poignant remarks, Rashmin. Perhaps, James, you have some things to say to that. I know you have worked in the Caribbean and have experience there. I also could address Rashmin's comments in terms of linking up with DRM initiatives. I don't know if you want to start first, James?
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, from the analytics side, at least within the Caribbean, we've got the same analytics as we have everywhere in terms of these, some of the analytics that I've shown of the number of arrivals, these types of things, the impact of mobility changes across there, as well as sort of these. It's not just for them; it's a lot to do with the cruise ship arrivals, and so taking into account the different modes of transport and the different reasons for people traveling there is key for the analytics within the Caribbean, and this is something that we do tie straight in on this COVID side. We take not just the case values, these types of things, but it's to do with when are each of the subnational governments actually opening up again, opening up for people to be able to travel to the locations again, and then also looking at each of the cruise ship companies and to then see what their schedules are and when are tourists or international tourists going to be able to come back. On the domestic side, within the Caribbean, it's obviously a little bit different. So a lot of theirs comes from international tourism. But on the analytics side, at least, I think this is something which we've been working on a lot, and something which we will hone as well once we have more and more hotels coming in from the Caribbean and more interest from some tourism destinations. It's something that we can add more and more analytics. I see this more as sort of being a family, as when we sort of see certain sort of groups of hotels popping up, we then will increase our analytic skills in these locations. We'll go into a greater depth than in other locations to make sure that group of hotels really does get the best possible analytics from the risk side, at least. And Bijan, I'll let you answer the local.
Yeah, that's side. Great, James. I'll keep it brief and just follow what you said. What you can do at a global level is very different than what you can do locally. And also in terms of linking up with DRM agencies, institutions, I mean, that's, when we started developing the standards, that's exactly what we were doing in the Visayas. And the aim is to find these kinds of clusters and build communities and, work together to build resilience across these communities. Right now, it's of course the COVID-19 crisis, but we're looking really at a long-term path towards resilience building in tourism and working directly with hotels and resorts. So one of the initiatives that we have right now is a research activity of looking across so many different guidelines, so many different standards that have come up, and to understand why are they different, and where does the science sit on it. And as we interact and get information from hotels, we hope to be able to, provide that feedback, be it as recommendations or as an input into the dialogue, because I see Hotel Resilient as sort of the, in contact with hotels directly, and also we come from a scientific background. We can connect these two pieces together. So I see a strong role for the Hotel Resilient Institute in that regard. And I'll maybe move on to the question that relates to this. The question is, how does the COVID Ready certification differ from existing certification schemes that are on the market? And there are many. I hope to have at least transferred some of what makes this different through the presentation. I can recap, what I have seen, and we've been looking at pretty much everything that's out there and publicly available, at least. Maybe not in terms of its full content, but at least you get a sense when you see Hilton and Lysol coming up with a standard, it goes in the direction of hygiene and cleaning, but it doesn't address the holistic, integrated way you look at things like guest communication, things that go into the direction of business continuity, risk-based approaches. So the idea of aligning this with a global standard on disaster risk management, and the disaster right now is of course COVID-19, but thinking about it in those risk-based terms in a holistic way, I think sets apart Hotel Resilient COVID Ready certification from the others. The other way I would say we're different is that we make everything transparent. You can, as soon as June 5 comes, you go and you see what the standards are. And you don't have to guess. There's no black box involved. Someone comes to the hotel and does a certification, awards you that. And that also is important for the guests, because the guests could also go and say, okay, these guys are saying they're COVID ready by Hotel Resilient. What is it that is behind it? We also will be advertising our certified members on our own website, and we work with other groups that can provide on-site certification when that's possible. And finally, I would say the whole idea of what Jane mentioned, the dynamic aspect and flexibility of it. We want to make sure that this isn't just a cookie cut standalone module, but that it's able to adjust to the local conditions to the extent, and I have to add this, that we have the capacity to address that. Because we're making the tool available globally, I don't expect that we can go into every region and address that. So that is why it's very important for us to work in clusters, regions, countries, and from there we'd be able to grow and cater to different groups. And lastly, I would say, I hope that the prices that you saw don't, those are what we see as quite affordable compared to what I've seen on the market, compared to what's charged. And in solidarity with hotels right now going through this crisis, we are making this available. And our aim, of course, is to pull you with us in terms of a long-term journey, in terms of building a community.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Great of you to join us. Can you pose your question to the group?
Yeah, I had the comment here. Of course, we have to collaborate with the DOT here in the Philippines because that's the usual happening here. And secondly, all tourism organization also, it should be collaborated with the DOT. So what I'm saying here, usually if we have, because the government also, the DOT having the protocols in terms of safety and resiliency. So how this membership should be take impact with the market?
So that's a great question. The idea of the certification is to add value and be integrated within the activities and efforts that DOT is implementing in the Philippines that you're mentioning. So that the health and safety guidelines, for example. And we won't have an impact on the market if we're not talking the same language. So very early on, I hope I'm addressing the question the way you've posed it, but the way I understand your question is that our effort has been to work together with the DOT, not now in COVID ready. Long ago when we started this, even with the star rating and accommodation standards that the DOT has, we were trying to see what is it that Hotel Resilient can build on top of that and look at the sort of risk aspects of it, the risk audit that is a part of the accommodation rating in the Philippines. So if we can be relevant in that way, and if we can work in alignment together, and the DOT then endorses this as a tool, that is the idea behind the MOA that we're trying to work out together, that then I think we can also have the certification will have that value in terms of impact on the market, on the domestic market. But what goes beyond that is also the international market. Once that resumes, to have an international certification, perhaps for your international visitors, might be also something that makes sense and makes this more marketable. I hope I addressed your question right, if I understood it correctly.
All right. Basically, I have to go over on the website so that I can understand more of the information that I have to check. It's a big help also for this kind of things to be to align, especially this time of the pandemic. That's all of the hotels and resort here in the Philippines as the #1 affected in terms of revenue and in terms of the market that we have also here. So I'll just go over it, sir, and then after that I'll just give an email what would be additional question that I have to address. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And any one of you, info@hotelresilient.org, anytime, please do contact us. The website will be adding more content as we speak. So, right now, if you go there, there's a brochure on the homepage that you can click through that talks about the COVID ready tools, what you saw in the presentation. We'll be adding a whole section on the website on this. The membership plan that I showed you on the screen is now on the website, so you can have a look in that in detail. And there's more detail that you can see there if you go under the membership tab. And please keep in mind June 5 as our rollout date. So that's when we expect you to come and just sign up. for free. There's no hurdles. You just enter your name and your hotel and you're ready to go. That I think I can take from the audience is from Sana Rashid. How are you planning to educate the potential guests about these certifications? Which is a great question. So a guest like a hotel, because the platform is open, can come and look. There's a whole section, Andreas didn't go into all the details of the software, but there's a section there that's called standards. And you can go into that and look at the standards. We will make a abbreviated version of that because a guest probably doesn't want to go through 50 different elements with a bunch of criteria, but we'll make a easy to understand sort of brochure style documentation on the standards. We'll make that available on our website so that guests can understand what's behind COVID Ready. And then we'll have a map as well where the members will be listed. And if they're certified, we'll show what certification that they have so that guests could also look and see where these hotels that are COVID Ready are, as well as working with tour operators and other partners that we're looking at to try to spread the word and get them aware of this certification. I would like to thank you very much for giving us more than an hour of your time. I really I know some of you, and when we sent the invitations, they're not just based on some list that we got somewhere. These are deeper ties that we've had since 2015, since we've been doing this. And I'm so happy to see Romel's face and many of the others' names that I've seen here. So I do hope that we have this opportunity to work together to respond to this current crisis now. But also, as James said, we're looking at this as a community and build those relationships and provide value beyond an audit and a certification in terms of knowledge sharing. And for that, I think the webinars and the newsletters will be one of our most important vehicles to communicate to you. So thank you so much for your participation today. Do feel free to get in touch with us if you should have any questions that come back to you later. And at this point then, I will end the meeting for everyone and until next time we see each other. Thank you. See you around.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.